Welcome back to Just Chattin. And this is the series of videos that we do on Sunday evenings. Remember, we are not doing Thursday evening videos for a little while, although I hope we'll get back to that soon. This is the series of videos we do on Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. Now, I was not prepared to begin this video, but Audie was. So, knowing that so many of you are tuning into the channel just to see Audie, at least that's what he tells me, I figured I'd better take advantage of his presence, so we had a little bit of cat time before we get started. And yes, Audie is here with me. He has been sleeping under the kitchen table. This is new. This cat, he never fails to find a new way to express his displeasure. So as soon as I think I've got it all worked out, nope, he finds something new. So now it's under the kitchen table. Oh, I believe he just knocked the trash over. Under the kitchen table, I need to pay attention to him. So we are going to take a quick break for the intro, and we will be right back. So, I thought we would start off by taking a look at the most recent results issued by YouGov. And this is a polling agency, and this is their polling results on the popularity or lack thereof of the British royal family. So, the way they do this is they will take sample populations and when they say, for example, and we're going to start with William when we pull the chart up, they say 76% of the population view him favorably. This does not mean they have polled 100% of the population. It means they've gotten sample results from different communities. They will usually go pretty far out of their way to allow for things like socioeconomic status, regions, people in the city, people in the country, for example. It's UK, so they're going to be looking at England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and they will try to make sufficient allowances to ensure that the results that they are presenting are a reasonable picture of the larger group of people. So if they say 76% of the population views William favorably, that's probably pretty accurate. So let's look at the chart. So as I mentioned, top of the list is William. Now, when we look at this chart, the numbers on the left-hand side in the purple bars, that is the percentage of people who have a favorable opinion of the royal in question. The next bar section is gray, and that represents people who either do not have an opinion or do not have strong feelings one way or another. The best way to look at this is the undecided group, but undecided covers a lot of ground. And then when we move over to the right-hand side of the bars in red, this represents the percentage of people who view the royal in question negatively. So, with William, 76%, and that's that purple bar, view him positively. 8% either don't have an opinion or they're undecided, and then 16% have a generally negative perception of him. He is followed very closely by Catherine, 74% positive, 13% undecided, and 13% negative. And right on their heels is Princess Anne, 70% positive, 18% undecided, and 12% negative. Now, this is not surprising. Whenever you see charts like this, there will usually be a group of people near the top who are generally perceived positively. They haven't done anything to incur the public wrath. They get up in the morning, do their jobs, and everybody's, generally speaking, satisfied with them. Then we move down a bit, because we're no longer in the 70s. We move down a bit to Charles at 62% favorable, 8% undecided, and 31% negative. Now, it's probably not a surprise that Charles has greater negative numbers than either William, Catherine, or Anne, because Charles is perceived as the decision maker. So he is likely to get credit for things the people like, and he is likely to get some negative views when people don't like things. So in some ways, Charles is sort of a lightning rod. So I would have to throw that caveat out there. Now when we get down to Edward and Sophie, and their numbers are largely similar as well. Edward is at 53% positive, Sophie at 51%. The undecideds, Edward is at 29%, Sophie is at 36%. And the negatives, Edward is at 18%, Sophie is at 14%. And this is a trend you see with lesser known or people who are perceived to be less important. And I hate to say that less important, but that's the perception. They are not quite as central to the reins of power. And you will see a larger percentage of people not having an opinion one way or another. And very often you will see less in terms of negative response. So the further you are removed from the corridors of power, the more likely you are to generally be perceived as positive. And I think we see that pretty clearly with Edward and Sophie. And now we get down to Camilla. And Camilla's numbers are very interesting. 43% positive, 13% undecided, 44% negative. So for Camilla, this is almost 90% of the population falls down pretty evenly divided. Either you are Team Camilla or you are not. That is not really surprising because there are a lot of people who remember Diana, who view Camilla in a negative light because of the history of her relationship with Charles. I do not see that Camilla has done anything as queen to merit that 44% negative. But I do think this is the Diana card coming into play. And now we move on to the next Diana card, and that is Harry. And Harry's numbers are 33% positive, 9% undecided, and 58% negative. And I think in this case, we are seeing the Diana card too. 33% of the population have a favorable opinion of him. I would say that is largely because they remember the little boy walking behind his mother's coffin, mostly because Harry has done very little for the nation or the British royal family. He has no accomplishments to be laying before them. He has no history of consistent royal duties. But still, he is regarded favorably by a third of the population. And I would say it's the very same reason that Camilla is seen as so polarizing. It's the memory of Diana. But still, with 58% negative, that is pretty gosh darn bad. And now as we skip down, we've got Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and their numbers are almost identical. Beatrice has a 30% positive perception, Eugenie 29%. Beatrice has 36% undecided, Eugenie has 37%. And they are both perceived negatively by 34% of the population. So in rough terms, a third of the population like them, a third of the population do not like them, and a third of the population just don't care. That is fairly normal, and we saw something similar when we were looking at Edward and Sophie, a large percentage, and in both cases, with the York girls and with Edward and Sophie, it's about a third of the population that is just not all that interested one way or the other. And now we are picking up the dregs. Nutmeg. And nutmeg is perceived positively by 22% of the population, which comes as an incredible surprise to me, but still, the numbers don't lie. 22% perceive her positively. Another 13% are undecided or indifferent, as I said before, but 65% have a negative view of her. So that is almost exactly 2/3 of the population. So yeah, this is bad, and this is the lowest that her popularity has ever been on any one of these polls. Now, of course, Andrew is bringing up the rear, and although the chart does not list the numbers, we can do the math. That little purple bar is so small, they can't even fit the number 2 in there, but that would be the percentage of popular opinions, 2%. 6% are undecided or don't care, and 92%, which is stupendous, 92% are just not having Andrew anymore. And now at the bottom of this chart, when you have the royal family in general and the monarchy, this is putting a different spin on this. So 60% like the royal family in general. 60% have a positive opinion. 8% are undecided or indifferent, and 32% have a negative opinion. The institution of the monarchy, 57% view it positively. 9% are either indifferent or undecided, and 34% view it negatively. So overall, the monarchy and the royal family have a relatively positive perception. 2/3 like them, 1/3 do not. And this is interesting because you can see that this popularity is largely based on the perceptions the general public have of the top 4 people on this list: William, Catherine, Anne, Charles, because they are all above that 53% mark, which is where Edward is. So that is where the royal family as a whole is shaking out. And the reason this is important is because when you look at the really poor showing of Nutmeg and the sock puppet, you have to compare that to the relatively favorable opinion that 2/3 of the British public have of the royal family and the monarchy. So this is not just a question of the Republicans, and I have to clarify this, in the UK it means something very different than it does in the US. In the UK, the Republicans are the people that would like to abolish the monarchy, and here in the US, it is simply one of our two major political parties. So, that's not what this is, because absolutely the majority of the population like the monarchy and like the royal family, but they don't like them universally. There are some they like very much, and some they're really not all that fond of. So, let's hope that somebody somewhere in Buckingham Palace is paying attention to these polls, because quite frankly, Charles's desire to streamline the monarchy is, well, any justification he needs is wrapped up in these poll results. It is very clear that the people like some of the royals, in particular the high-profile, hard-working royals, and they're just largely indifferent to the rest. Oh, and I should say, I happen to believe that Edward and Sophie are doing an excellent job, but it is normal for the less prominent members not to have such a strong impact on public opinion. Sorry for that brief interruption. It is pouring rain here, and it was getting just too noisy to film, so I had to wait out the worst of the storm. But going back to the poll, that would have been compiled within the last 3 to 4 weeks. And the reason for that is in order to have results that are useful and valid when they come out in the realm of politics in particular. And I'm throwing the royal family in there because it is a quasi-political institution. The popularity of politicians and royals, quasi-politicians, is very dependent on current events. So you can look at popularity results from 2 months ago and find they are just no longer reflecting what the people are thinking now, 2 months later, because the landscape has changed. The fact that these results were from a period in which Nutmeg and the Sockeye were going back to the UK for this happy little reunion that they are alleging took place with Charles. I've already given you my opinion on that. It's like they lost all their credibility with me. That is showing that even their efforts to try to get back in with the royal family in a low-profile way are going over like a lead balloon. The British people simply do not want that. And that is in, I was going to say a black and white, but no, it is in a purple and red poll. They are not wanted back in the UK. And I think that is what we need to take out of this, that no matter what the media is telling us, what the people are telling us is, no thank you, just go away. Which I guess for those of us in the US is bad news, because that means we're going to be stuck with them for a while longer. But the general consensus in the media now, and it's interesting to see the media finally taking the gloves off and looking at Nutmeg in the cold light of day without being so heavily influenced by their PR machinery or the royal glow. The media is basically saying they're done. They are talking about the possibility that Harry will end up being forced into bankruptcy by the court settlement regarding his unsuccessful suit against the Mail News Group. I don't believe that's going to happen. I think that whatever happens, Charles is going to write a check because, frankly, that is what the late Queen did with Andrew, who, let's face it, was embroiled in a much worse scandal, and Charles paid some portion of Andrew's settlement with Virginia Dupree, and the Queen paid the rest. So, will Charles write a check? Oh yeah, because that's what these people do. They will simply write a check. Whatever their sense of morality, of right and wrong, of I will not countenance this, that just falls right out the window when they feel the family is being attacked. They write a check in order to make it go away. So, is that what's going to happen? Yes. Will Harry declare bankruptcy? No. Is this enough to bankrupt Charles? Not even close. So I think the media is very much off base as far as that goes. But we are also looking at the fact that all of the sock puppets' ventures, Africa Parks, Centauri, his never-ending lawsuits against the media, his fight to get security, Travelist, whatever happened to Travelist? All of these things are just getting flushed down the toilet, so he no longer has any identity besides Prince of England and Army veteran, which he is citing as his jobs these days. Nutmeg, meanwhile, has her own ventures going down the toilet. We are not even hearing that mandatory new product drop from As Ever anymore. So it looks very much like, I was going to say we're seeing the beginning of the end. Now I think, frankly, we're probably seeing the beginning of the end of the end. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities between the situation Nutmeg and the sock puppet are in and the situation that Edward, the Duke of Windsor, and his charming wife Wallis were in at the end of the Second World War. Because remember, we're watching roughly the same time frame. Edward abdicated in 1936, and the time frame was a bit slower because, of course, no social media, but also because there was a 6-year interruption with World War II. Now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the same sort of trajectory. But that's a topic for another video. So, that is what I have for you today. I didn't want to just throw the numbers out in a vacuum. I wanted you to see the whole thing and understand what this generally means. And what it means is Nutmeg and the sock puppet are being rejected by the British people. Are they being rejected as resoundingly as Andrew? No. It's a rejection nonetheless, and it's a clear one. So, that is what I have for you today. Thank you for being with us. I hope to see you again next time. We're going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.